Yes, SANDF has condemned the alleged misconduct by some members of the SADC mission in Mozambique, also known as SAMIM. This follows an alleged social media video depicting SANDF and other unknown Defence Force members throwing deceased bodies in a pile of burning rubble in Mozambique. In a statement, SANDF says it has been made aware of a video clip circulating on social media. It's believed that the incident took place in November last year. The SANDF currently has members serving as part of the SADC mission fighting the insurgency in Mozambique. They form part of a combined force and fall under the command and control of the SADC mission. The SANDF says the force commander of SAMIM has launched a full-scale investigation into the matter. It says it does not know or in any way condone acts depicted in the video, and anyone found guilty should be brought to book. Helmut Heitman is an independent security and defense analyst. He joins us now to speak about this. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Mr. Heitman. Have you seen the video, and what do you make of it?
I've seen one. I'm not sure whether there are more around, but I've seen one clip. It's a very unpleasant clip, and I certainly would expect better of our troops. Having said that, the clip I saw, I don't actually see any South African soldier throwing bodies on a fire. I do see a South African soldier videotaping it or taking photos with his cell phone. So the question there is he participating, were our people participating, or was this happening and they were recording it for reporting purposes? And ideally they should stop it. But if you're outranked or if, depending on the situation, maybe they physically couldn't. I think, it's unacceptable. It's sloppy discipline. It's not a way you treat anybody. You're not a body of an enemy either. But one must also consider, we don't know what happened immediately before. Had those particular terrorists just butchered some civilians, or had they maybe injured or killed some of the soldiers, in which case soldiers sometimes do lose the plot and get a bit carried away. It's not unique.
You say
to
some
anyone.
case soldiers do what?
Army. It shouldn't happen. It does. I think the first thing we would have to establish is were South African soldiers involved in actually doing that, or were they just recording it for reporting purposes? If the latter, they didn't do anything wrong.
I heard you, Mr. Heitman, say sometimes soldiers do, and I wasn't sure what the next sentence was. They sometimes do what?
Sorry, say again?
At some point you said sometimes soldiers do something. The rest of that sentence was lost. I don't know if it's the line or...
Oh, I see, yeah. Look, I think if a bunch of soldiers come across a particularly brutal massacre of civilians, for instance, or find all of their owners being tortured or dismembered or something, then they do lose the plot. They can slide out of control. It's happened in every army in the world. And then they treat the bodies or prisoners even badly. It shouldn't happen, but it does happen in every army in the world under some circumstances. There are lots of stress, and people aren't always well-behaved and civilized and disciplined under that sort of stress. This particular situation doesn't look like it. It looks a little bit more cool, calm, and collected, and that makes it a bit worrying. They shouldn't be behaving like that. Quite apart from the not being a decent way to behave, it's the sort of action that is going to inspire revenge on the part of the terrorists. It's going to, now, bearing in mind that a lot of the terrorists are local people who've lived there. Their families will now see this, perhaps, and see, okay, they may not agree with their son having gotten involved with this, but to see the body treated like that is a different ballgame. So you actually make enemies if you do that. You aggravate the situation. So quite apart from any moral implication, it's stupid.
I want to talk about the mission itself. I know what has often been emphasized is that the military is not only the first line of defense, but it has to be complemented with many other lines of support in order to quell insurgency and stop it from recurring. I'm wondering, what would this be? And would this include also returning dignity to local citizens? Because if you say sometimes soldiers do this, even though it shouldn't happen, but it does happen in situations of war and conflict.
Yeah, look, you try to avoid it. You train your soldiers, you educate them, you speak to them, and you try to get them to behave like civilized human beings. But once it gets down to the point of people killing each other, that little thin veneer of civilization does slip away fairly quickly. And there isn't an army in the world that's escaped it. The real problem in this case, of course, that being an insurgency situation, the forces fighting the insurgents, fighting the terrorists, are supposed to be looking after the interests of the entire population. They're supposed to be upholding that bit of civilization. So you really can't afford that sort of ill discipline. And whoever the people who did this, unless they've got some really good reason or excuse, I would step on them quite hard. You know, as I said, what worries me the most is not even the moral aspect. It's the sheer stupidity of it, because you're just aggravating the situation.
Okay, you mentioned that we obviously don't know what the SANDF's role is in this at this point, and this is why there's the investigation. But you mentioned that they also report to someone, and I'd imagine what you're talking here is about the hierarchy of the SADC mission in Mozambique. Now, it has been extended multiple times, but yet the violence continues to also affect the northern regions of the country, in spite of the presence of thousands of troops. Can you just share with us a little bit more about the configuration, and is there any clear exit for SAMIM inside?
Okay, the Cabo Delgado situation is a bit problematical. You've got an insurgency that is partly based on genuine dissatisfaction with how the Mozambique government has neglected that province. You've got a province that has had a long record now of organized crime. Narcotics smuggling, people trafficking, illegal logging, illegal poaching, you name it, it's been happening there. And then you have the extremist Islamist component on top of it. So it's a very mixed up situation there, and some really brutal behavior by the insurgents. The problem now with the security side is that the Mozambique forces were clearly far too weak, too poorly trained, too poorly equipped to do anything about it. The Rwandans came in, and they're tough, they're very professional soldiers. They pretty well quickly secured the area around the gas plant, but they're focusing on that only. And one of the reports I've read suggests that the French are paying them to do that, to secure the gas area and the area around it, so that the project can restart. The SABC force, SAMIM, went in to really try and pacify the rest of that province. Now, the problem there is the force that's been deployed is far too small to do the job properly. It's got minuscule air support, laughably too little air support. It's got, was supposed to have a naval component that would actually block any supplies coming to the guerrillas by sea, but that naval component was supposed to be from the South African Navy, and they haven't been able to maintain their ships, so they haven't actually been able to keep the ship up there. So what we have is far too small a force without the support it needs, and they are not going to be effective. They're going, sure, if they actually find terrorists, they will kill them, or capture them with a bit of luck. They will be effective and successful in pretty much every contact, but they're too few on the ground to actually do the job, with one result being that we've already had attacks to the south of Cabo Delgado and to the west of Cabo Delgado. So the insurgency, far from being squashed, is actually spreading a bit.
I want to talk about...
If you don't put enough troops on the ground, that is going to happen. But having said that, even if we put 10,000 soldiers in there to really deal with insurgency, that's not good enough. At the end of the day, the Mozambique government has got to come to the party. They've got to roll out proper government services in the province.
And I want to talk about the role of the Mozambican government, Mr. Heitman. The fact that some observers say that it took so long for them to invite the Southern African development community to deploy troops. Did this mean that Mozambique was showing a lack of trust and a little faith in the mission, and therefore this is probably the reason behind some of these challenges?
Look, I've got no insight into what the Mozambique government thinking was, but I have read reports saying that there was infighting at government level between those who wanted a regional force to come in and do something about it, and others who didn't because it would interfere with the money they're making out of the criminal enterprises there, because there are politicians involved in them too. And they dragged their feet, and I guess the Rwandans came in earlier because that was seems to have been a very straightforward contract. Come in, clear up the area around the gas fields and secure that. That doesn't get in the way of the smuggling, of the illegal mining, of the illegal logging, of anything else. And a lot of people are making a lot of money out of that. Much like in Eastern Congo, in the east of the DRC. There are a lot of people making a lot of money out of illegal mining and logging and poaching. And they don't want peace and stability. The last thing they want is to reduce their income. I think we have that same problem in Cabo Delgado, and the government in Mozambique is not exactly incorruptible. That's been a problem. Then I suppose there's also a little bit of national pride. I don't want to invite people in to come and do something. Quite why the SAMIM force was then spec'd so weakly, I don't know. Okay. I read a document, the original force design proposal, and it was clearly very professionally drawn up. I ever do it up, but he must have at the same time been cringing with embarrassment because clearly the force levels were totally inadequate. I think that is a political issue. Now, it might have been the Mozambique government not wanting stronger forces on the ground. It might have been that half the SADC countries didn't want to deploy more or couldn't afford to deploy more.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Helmut Romer-Heitmann is an independent security and defense analyst.